Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us here on the ATM Global stage, where today we're going to be talking about smart kids, shaping the luxury travel experience for a new generation of customers. My name is Joe Mortimer, and I'm the editor-at-large of Destinations of the World News. Joining me on stage today is a panel of experts who are leading the charge when it comes to providing extraordinary travel experiences for junior travellers. Please join me in welcoming Philippe Zuber, President and Chief Operating Officer, One and Only Resorts. Philippe leads the strategic development of the One and Only brand. Last year, the company announced the evolution of the ultra-luxe One and Only portfolio with the addition of new nature resorts, urban resorts, and private homes, all of which will continue the brand's history of creating outstanding luxury travel experiences for adults and children alike. Second, Kate Dicker is the founder and business development consultant for Worldwide Kids. Worldwide Kids is a UK-based specialist childcare consultancy that works with hotels and resorts around the world to create very special places and safe, nurturing environments for junior travellers of all ages. And last but no means least, Simon Casson is President of Hotel Operations for Europe, Middle East and Africa of Four Seasons. Simon oversees a portfolio of luxury properties that includes palace hotels in Europe, glittering skyscrapers in the Middle East, and hideaway beach resorts, and a safari lodge in Africa. So guys, welcome. Thank you very much for being here. As well as being seasoned travel professionals with a combined industry experience of more than 80 years, would you believe? All three of them are parents. So we're in very good hands with some serious experts on the kids industry. Right, I'm going to take a seat down here now. So, to give this conversation a little bit of context, let's start off by establishing exactly who it is that we are talking about here today. Kate, if you will kick us off, what does a typical 12-year-old child look like today? What do they want in terms of their travel experiences?
12-year-old children are completely different now than they were when I was 12. I mean, you only have to take the example in the past few days of an Australian boy of 12 who managed to get himself his passport, borrow his parents' credit cards and fly to Bali because his parents had decided they weren't going to go on holiday there that year.
Wow.
He also managed to spend 4 days in resort. He did 2 different flights. He checked himself into the hotel and spent 4 days in resort before he was actually found. That's what a 12-year-old is like now. When I was 12...
Intrepid, to say the least.
Yes, absolutely. We might get on our bike and cycle to the next village and sulk in a phone box somewhere for a few hours before going home for tea. But your 12-year-old now they have access to so much more information than we ever did. So therefore, their thrill-seeking behaviours tend to happen an awful lot earlier. It's not just teenagers who thrill seek now, it's much younger children.
Sure. And gents, how do you find that children are different to when we were youngsters? They're a bit more demanding, Simon?
Yeah, they probably all have extraordinarily strong thumbs, very dexterous hands. Everything can be done in one hand, sort of, turning around the phone. I think, as Kate said, that it's really, about access to information. They're incredibly more educated and aware than we were when we were 12 years old, because not only is the world available through the internet, but they're largely interacting with the world through the internet. So, I think 12-year-olds now are, significantly more savvy, significantly more world aware, more environmentally aware, more politically aware. And I think 12-year-olds are generally aspirational today about what they want to do and see and experience in this world that they see is all there and open to them.
Sure. Philippe, do you agree?
I fully agree, and they're totally part of the experiences. I guess that if you get a step back, we were not that much involved on destination and where to go on vacations, but as of today, at 12 years old, is totally part of the vacation booking process, and is even the one which is deciding and taking the parents to vacation. And specifically, to what one and only is very specialized beach resort and destination for purely family vacation, we see very much often that the children is the key decision maker when it comes to do the booking.
Right. So perhaps the traditional relationship between parents and children are reversing a little bit when it comes to the travel sphere, at least. And is it just me, or am I seeing more of them every time I travel? There seem to be a lot more younger families traveling with kids. I'm not just talking about the business class cabin of the plane, where there's inevitably, one or two, but there seem to be a lot more at resorts as well. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think possibly shifting, wealth demographics mean that people are traveling with their children, far more often. I think that hotels and resorts are more children friendly, that luxury is not seen solely as an adult preserve. I think all of those things, contribute towards it.
Sure.
And probably the water is making us all more virile at the same time.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts on to why it is we're seeing more of the younger travellers with their families?
I think it's got a lot to do with the fact that we've all got a lot of things. We all own a lot of possessions, particularly in the Western world and in the Middle East. And therefore, we don't need any more items being given to us. What we actually want is experiences. And therefore, people are travelling far more with their families as an experience as opposed to having yet another gift. I think that's really why we're seeing more kids, and also they're more out there. When we were 12 or younger, we were very much seen but not heard, whereas kids nowadays are perfectly happy to put themselves front and centre, so there probably seems like they're more because they're more vocal.
Sure, interesting, okay. So Philippe and to Simon, but Philippe first. As hoteliers, you have a duty of care to all of your guests, anyone staying with you. But what kind of additional responsibilities do you take on towards your junior guests?
I think we're seeing that as a more holistic approach. First of all, we see much more a multi-generational traveling. And meanwhile, we cannot treat on isolation purely the younger guests because we just need to care of the whole entire family. And we see that if our guests are traveling in a more younger age, I'm sure they are traveling as well with their parents, their grandparents in a much more regular way. And that's obliging you from a design standpoint to understand the connectivity, the place for relax, the place for adult, the place for children. So that's gives us a lot of responsibility when it comes to design resort and to understand that each of those age group needs specific area. But what I must say is that it's more towards the differentiations between the different age group. I mean, we need to have a very, very specific program for each of the age group, and this is really fastly evolving. I think we address very, very well across our resort the 0 to 3.
Yeah.
This is an age group which is often forgotten and not giving really the time for the parents to relax, and it's very difficult and require very, very special skills individual to take care of those age group. And very often in kids club, in teens club, if you have those children, they can totally change the dynamic of the animation or whatever happens to the kids club.
Yeah.
So we need to be very, very good on making them that they have a program, but it's separated from then the other age group, which is 3 to 10. And this is another age group which require a very, very important dedications and some specific set of activities.
Yeah.
And what we have found out, which is something which you might agree on, is that teenagers start at 10.
Yeah.
And that the level of program is very, very important, knowing that a teenager can act as a teenager of the age of 10, but he might be very happy to have a 5-year-old activity for 10 minutes in a day. So you need to be able to navigate in within this age group. And the individuals, which is 15, wants to be act and treated as an adult.
Sure.
So it meanwhile that while they cannot go in any of the locations, what we have done very carefully in one and only, any children which is on the age of 15, he mostly have access to any of the activities which is available to adults. Mm-hmm. I mean, he can go with a certain coaching and approach to the spa and get some amazing services. He can go to the gym, which is often refused below the age of 18.
Sure.
To some classes and some different activities. So it's just changed the entire dynamics of which age group you are talking to and how to entertain different type of age group.
That's interesting, and it also shows a little bit of sort of respect for the older teenagers who perhaps are used to and dislike being treated like children, allowing them access to those areas. Simon, are there any other responsibilities that you take on towards your junior travellers that you perhaps don't need to worry about so much for the grown-ups?
I don't think you can separate the two. I think what we do recognize is that, vacations are often very stressful times for families, particularly when they're coming to luxury high-end resorts. You'll have a mum and a dad, or a mum and a dad who both have high-powered jobs, who are not necessarily used to looking after their own kids, not necessarily used to being alone mum and dad for a whole week together, and then with these kids that you have to interact with and keep busy as well. So we're pretty aware that, we're there to be a facilitator of memorable moments. And so the responsibility is to make it memorable, and I think you do that through the kids by making it fun and by making it educational. They will have certain expectations of what a hotel is, and I think we have to surprise them, and we have to sort of, create moments that are going to be unexpected. In our resort in Cap Ferrat, which, the Côte d'Azur is known for beautiful motoring through those, sunlit roads. So we have miniature Porsches and Alfa Romeo Spiders that the younger kids can ride through the gardens. So they're able to recreate or create their own little Côte d'Azur experience.
Sure.
So I think being creative in experiences that you try and provide that are somewhat unexpected.
Excellent. Okay. And thinking about the expectations of the parents, I think you just alluded to that a little bit, but Kate, how do you kind of balance the needs of different types of parent groups, the ones who perhaps want to spend more time with their children, or perhaps want their children in good care while they are kind of reconnecting as a couple?
I think what you were saying is absolutely right in the fact that there should be activities that are specifically designed for children to do alone without their parents. But I think it's really important for hotels and resorts to make sure that there are experiences the whole family can enjoy together. It's very important that everyone has their own space, and it's also very important that everyone feels like they are making their own choices. But if you can find something that everyone wants to do together, that's a wonderful thing. But there is a huge need for there to be some part-time as well. Because I agree, a lot of parents are working very demanding jobs, both of them in work at the same time. And they build up their holiday as an enormous expectation. They're all going to have a wonderful time together. But actually that can cause more drama and problems than should be there. So therefore the hotels need to give something that allows everyone to have their own free time, but then enjoy the experience, maybe even just talking about what they've done individually together at some point during the evening.
And Philippe, at One and Only, how do you address that unpredictability of what the parents require?
I think this is really what we always aiming for, creating memorable experiences and everlasting memories. But one of our first objectives across our resort is to able to reconnect. And I totally agree with Simon. When mom and dad are working, we need to make sure that they're re-understanding the dynamic of a family. Something which we do very well, and I think which works, is whenever you offer a cooking class for a family, they learn again to how to communicate it, to leave the devices and to being able to cooking something together. Then the vacation can start because you create a bubble of communication. And what we have done in the newest renovated resort, which I think addressed the point that you just mentioned, is we have changed the dynamic of the resort by, in many of the resorts, the tennis court is in one part of the resort, the teens club is into another part, and if you have the children activity center, which is another part, beach is very far away. So when a mom wants to maybe engage with two of the children, she's losing like 25 minutes for just remotely going to one space to another's. Our view there was to create a club one, where all of the activity are centralized to one locations. And that's give us the opportunity that while you do your yoga sessions, you can go and check a pottery activity for your children. You can see how he perform in tennis academy. And having the exchange which is creating across one location and address all of the age group creates such a dynamic. And what is very, very important over and above is that it's giving more connection above the family. So you can creating some connectivity with some guests which is around. And that was creating the engagement and the experiences. And we found these pilot experiences that we have created in Mauritius extremely rewarding and having some amazing, amazing return for the guests. And what we find out as well is that the generation of customers that we are talking to, they're extremely competitive. They like tournaments. They like to have activities against the others, and the parents find them extremely rewarding as well.
Sure.
So having them progressing over the week and having some result of so tournament, make it that you create a storytelling across the activity. And that works extremely well.
Fantastic. Well, we've talked a little bit about some of the broader picture issues, but let's have a look now about some of the best practices that you guys implement across your hotels and the clients you work with. So Simon, perhaps you could kick us off, talk us through some of the invitations, some of the innovations that you are working on at Four Seasons.
Yeah, I think the reality is, and we always look at our adult guests and our kids guests, what's the latest, what's the newest thing that they want. We tend to sort of reverse that and say, how can we make sure that we're being incredibly good at the basics every day? Because that creates the foundation of the experience. And I think, whether for an adult or child, they want everything to work in terms of clean, hot, cold. So focusing on the basics and making sure that, what people have traditionally come to luxury for. I think it changes on the periphery, but not at the center. But in terms of, specifically how we innovate, how we communicate with the guests. We launched a chat function last year, and I think it gets used as much, or if not more, by our teen guests than it does by mum and dad. But this is a chat function that just gives you instant communication, and that's what everyone is used to now. If you want to, if a 16-year-old wants to talk to the bank or to order some music online or to order a takeaway from P.F. Chang's, whatever it is, they're not having human interaction. So we have a chat function in 130 languages. You can write in Swahili or Mandarin, and it will immediately get interpreted and sent back. And that's allowed us a much more rapid communication with our guests. At the end of the day, a human being has to fulfill those requests. So I don't think it's taken away the human element, but it's very much making sure that there's instant communication. And then I would say, on top of that, the sort of hot and cold running water and air conditioning of yesteryear is internet bandwidth today. So making sure when mum, dad, Joshua, Charlotte, and Lottie come, and they each have 3 devices, that you're not restricted to, well, if you have more than 2 devices, you're going to have to pay, next year's school fees in advance or whatever it is. So make sure connectivity, make sure that it's fast, and make sure it's connectable. When you get into the room, there's a race for who gets their music connected fastest, because they're going to be the ones that have to listen to everyone's music.
Sure.
So making technology, accessible in the guest rooms, making it seamless as you're around a resort or a hotel, we think are incredibly important.
We're going to come back and talk a little bit more about technology later, but tell us a bit about the Kids for All Seasons programs.
Yeah, well, it's almost 30 years old. I started with the company about 30 years ago, and I think we just launched I was a kid then, so we launched the Kids for All Seasons. And so it's very much part of the DNA of Four Seasons. And, it's incredible as you sort of look after, young couples and weddings and honeymoons, and they come back, with their kids, that you want your guests to grow with Four Seasons. And so I think they started out fairly primitively. And what Kate does now and is able to, to help, different hotels and resorts with is how you elevate that experience, make sure it's safe. But, now, and, as Philippe was saying, there's an often missed demographic of 0 to 3, probably because they can't articulate their voice for themselves. But how you're looking after, babies and very young children is important. I think probably the most experienced area is the sort of 3 to 11, and what we've worked on a lot over the past years is that teen experience, because as Philip alluded to, teens are happening much earlier and their expectations are much higher. So we really focus the kids for all seasons as the center, the coming together to, yes, provide some childcare, but also provide access to activities. And our focus within that is how can we, bring their heads up often to experience what's around you. So if it's foraging for mushrooms in Hampshire, if it's in a different hotel, going through a cooking class or interactive experience with the rest of the family. Or, in the Serengeti, we have this amazing discovery center where you're looking at skulls and fossils and then walking out into the bush with the guide and really learning about what nature is. And when you're foraging, learning where the food comes from. So trying to connect the kids in a learning way to the experiences that they're having in the hotel.
Excellent stuff. Kate, I'm going to come back to you in a second. I just want to jump over to Philippe. Last time we spoke, you were very excited about the reopening of one and only Le Saint-Geran in Mauritius last year, and you've just mentioned Club One. Could you tell us a bit more about some of the kids' programming across the portfolio and how that's going to evolve into the new elements, the nature resorts and the urban resorts?
So we divided our experience into two segments. One is connect with the basics. I mean, most of our guests living in an urban environment, and they have absolutely no idea of what is collecting seashells or how a plant is growing. The basics of just interacting with animals, and that's really something that we learn a lot as well from our parent company and Atlantis, how you can really, wildlife and the marine species, how they can be really integrating into a resort. That's really impactful. The element with those basics, it means that even the experiences needs to be curated. And we need to give to our children, to the customers, a very much Instagrammable moment. Parents expecting this as well. I mean, even if this is very simple in the way that it is touching sand, is it collecting anything that you can find on the beach, you need to create that in a way that you can create memories out of these experiences and that the children can take it back to the parents can take that to the grandparents, and you can take it back home. So we pay a special attention for going back to the basic, but making sure that we're giving those unique moments that they can be expressed. And continuously, most of our resorts are beachfront located into absolutely amazing location. We're just talking with the GM of the hotel in Mauritius, what he has creating, he has invited a sand sculptor. So the way that he's doing that he's just not doing into a very basic ways, but the fact that he's making that in a very, very aesthetic and beautiful way, all of the families find it competitive to do something very, very special.
Okay.
And then suddenly, a basic activities becoming a family activities, becoming potentially a type of excitement, competitions, and then the whole resort benefit of a storytelling. And this we found extremely interesting. So that's one set of activities. And the baby animals is really something which works extremely well as well. So there is a huge number of activities that can be working there. And after the other set of activities, there's activities that people are very much interested to, are still becoming activities which are related to a technology, but not in the way that you think. It could be drone racing. So you're just creating and you have drones, you understand them how to pilot drones,
Sure.
which they know already, but then you make it in a race element that is becoming interesting to bring that in practice. We have DJ sessions, so you learn how to do mix, how you be part of a party, that afterwards the rewarding is to entertain your family out of an area. So all of those activities are extremely niche on the end, and they are displayed by really specialists. We found out that activities around photography are extremely popular to the children. Sounds very basic, but the usage of a camera and how to take the best of it works extremely well across our resort. So there is a good mix, while as a brand, we're making a commitment that we give enough content that the children will be totally out of the devices. Because that's what the parents are requesting.
Sure.
When they're going on vacation and on remote destinations, they want the connectivity for their own benefit, but they want the children totally to disconnect from their own devices.
Right.
So we have the mandate to find enough numbers of activities in order to totally disconnect them and learning how to reconnect with a group of individuals. So that's mainly the various area that we're really focusing on.
Fantastic. It sounds like there's a lot going on, and I like the way that you sort of divide the activities into the more active and the more kind of educational. I think you mentioned as well the lifeguard training certification that you can do. So not only do they learn, but they can take away an actual qualification at the end of it. So there's a nice reward there, which is fantastic. Kate, over to you. Tell us a little bit about what Worldwide Kids has been working with across the world.
We work across the world with hotels, resorts, leisure facilities to assist them in the same way as a hotel is usually not particularly expertise on their own spa, or if they're bringing in a water park, they bring in experts. We are the experts for the childcare industry. So I think a lot of hotels suffer from a lack of knowledge on the legislation side of things. There is an enormous amount of legislation when it comes to looking after children, the specialist policies and procedures that are required. And if you've got a European market, British European market, they have a certain expectation of what a kids club should be, what the policies should be, what the sign-in and out procedure should be. So we work with hotels and resorts to help them to resolve that. It's also about training your staff teams as well. We have specialist training that we've devised ourselves and had accredited by City and Guilds, so that we are helping those staff to develop as individuals as well. Mm-hmm. It's something that they can grow, and the prouder the staff are, the better the service is that's actually offered to the children. But as far as innovation is concerned, we have for years worked with lots of different hotels and resorts, and we always try to find the best of activities that are possible to do in that resort that adults tend to do, and then convert them into activities that children can do.
Sure.
But hotels now are also becoming more discerning, and they're wanting brand names to go with their own brand. So we've started working recently with Peppa Pig, mm-hmm. And we have the license to have Move with Peppa classes. So that's for the very little children instead of dance academies that we've also got for older children. So Move with Peppa is fantastic for babies and toddlers. And we've also linked up with Bear Grylls to do a survival academy. Fantastic. So again, in certain destinations that works really well to be able to have a brand name. And again, parents are very happy to pay. If they're paying for something, it's a service that they will always remember, and it's a source of income for the hotel. Because anything that is done better than standard in hotels costs money. So it's very important that we and the services we offer actually help the hotel to regain that money and actually make a decent revenue stream out of a kids club. It is possible to do if it's done right.
Excellent. I enjoyed when you pointed out yesterday or the day before that every single member of staff in a hotel will have to interact with children at some point, the guests in there. And if people aren't trained how to talk to kids, how to deal with them, whether it's a 7-year-old or a 15-year-old, they could come across as either patronising or aloof or condescending. So, gents, is there that level of training in your properties across all levels of staff as in how to interact with younger guests?
I think it's probably fairly standard just generally within a hotel at a high end. You have to teach the hardest thing, which is an intuitive sense of what's right to do. And whether it's for an adult that, at breakfast, that great service for them is bring me my double espresso and my newspaper and don't talk to me, or on the table next to them, Mr. and Mrs. Jones from Wisconsin who are here and they want to know what's going on in Dubai and chitty-chatty.
Yeah.
To train someone to understand the difference between two equally great service experiences is not easy. And so I think it's the same for kids. The worst thing you can have for a young child is if everyone comes and crowds around and come, have a good time, let me take you to the buffet. The parents are uncomfortable, they don't know you, they don't know their way around yet, the kid gets intimidated. So sensing, what is right for that child. And, intuition is informed by listening as well. So if you hear that a child is interested in Star Wars or is interested in Peppa Pig or, a hotel in Seoul, we do an alliance with Lego. where we have a special Lego partnership there. So listen to what the kids are interested, be able to bring to life those experiences. And I would say also, we always look at what's the most incredible. I had a note last week from a Russian family. It's actually a travel agent that came with her friend and daughter. And when she wrote, and they'd done different things, so there was an 8-year-old girl and she actually learned to swim while she was at the hotel. But the mother wrote for me the most meaningful thing, and she had to tell me that she'd stolen it, was that, and we all do it, her name in little foam letters on the bathtub. So simple. But that was so mean for the child to walk in and feel, this is my bathtub, So I don't think it always has to be, we invest several £100,000 in an amazing zip wire experience in our resort in Hampshire, which is, great for teens. But don't forget the little touches that are human and personal and can make that little being feel special.
Sure. Nice. Now, we've talked about technology a little bit, and I think there's that sort of fine line between providing enough technology that's going to appeal to a teen, things like the latest PlayStation and big screens, and also this need to get people to look up, as we've said, and kind of experience the outside world. Philippe, how do you draw that line between providing technology and getting people to look up?
I think we have just to understand that a kids club has to continuously evolve, and as well as a company giving the investment year on year in order to update it and provide some experiences. Just having a TV is not enough. They have already the TV at home, and potentially they have a much more larger TV than you have already on your kids club.
Sure.
So what you just need to be ensure is how to creating those experiences that they have something that they have not seen before. So it's obliging you to be extremely creative on the delivering, and most of the time the solutions that we are using as well, we integrating some partnership which are extremely good on what they are doing, and then they can creating something which is very unique and potentially cannot be duplicated in any of the other locations. We found out as well that the most simple experiences, outdoor cinema, is still working extremely well. But we just have to make sure that the sound system, that the delivery of the image needs really to be on the top of the highest quality. But our guests, when they're coming to our resort, what they enjoy the most is outdoor experiences.
Sure.
And it is very, very important that many of the experiences are giving outside of the comfort of a place where you have a roof. And then we have to push the technology to help us out to bring the client outside of the comfort zone and what they know very well when they're at home. So it's a right balance with both areas that we need to do. And what we found that as well, and our resort does that extremely well, on those kids' experiences is very often that we are involving the parents to enjoy the kids' experience at the time. It was a time that the kids' club were really only dedicated for children. But in fact, we create more and more activity that one member of the family, once at a time, is totally part of the children experiences. And that works extremely well. And then he's bringing the technology by making a movie, taking some pictures,
sure,
in order to have a memory of this special moment.
Excellent. And Simon, at Four Seasons, how do you walk the line between over-teching and under-providing?
Yeah, we do all that Philippe just said, and then on top of that, no, I think Philippe's right. You don't a TV and an Xbox station there. They're going to look and say, duh. So I think we look at it a little bit in extremes. We recently opened our first ski resort in Megève. So they have video games there, but it's the arcade ones where it's the whole car and you sit in and you have pedals so if you're going to do it properly. What we've also found is this, huge enjoyment of retro. So if you have that little game where you have to pull a stick out and it doesn't all fall apart,
sure,
or a hula hoop, going back to more basic games, I think is meaningful because the parents will say, hey, we used to do that, and then the kids get involved in it and it becomes fun. And then also, try and get the kids and the families outside of the kids club. And we're generally fortunate to be located in some of the most beautiful parts in the world, particularly in the resorts. So, use that nature, use the nature that's there. In the Maldives, lasting memories when you can create your own sort of artificial reef by, the kids, and my kids did it when they were like really tiny, and they're in their 20s now, and we were just back in the Maldives at Christmas, and they dived to find the reef that like 16 years before they tied the little corals on. I don't know if it was the same one, but they believed it. They believed it was. So trying to interact in that way, kids love animals, as you say, turtle conservancies, working with the natural, marine life or nature that's around you.
Sure. So it sounds like a lot of the experiences that you're bringing in are to do with that idea of capturing a sense of place, which is such a kind of buzz term at the moment. Mm-hmm. Kate, how do you advise hoteliers that they do that, especially when it's in more kind of city locations? How do you bring the sense of the destination into a property for children?
We don't tend to work with a huge amount of city destination hotels. It tends to be hotels and resorts, and we are very aware of using every single part of that resort. And going back towards what you were talking about technology, again, we are very keen on taking children away from screens. There's been some very interesting research done recently showing that anyone, child or adult, who looks at a single screen, so an iPad or a phone screen, for an hour, has their happiness reduced by 14%. For every hour that you spend looking at a screen. However, interactive activities that you can now do, if you've got enough space, because they do take up a lot of space, so you can use technology in a much broader sense, but with other people. So you're not just doing it on your own. The idea is to try to take kids and adults away from being very solitary and bring them into a far more sociable environment. But you can do that with the kind of outside-inside that we've been talking about as well. If you think about a few years ago, the craze for Pokemon Go, where you can actually develop apps that allow children to do almost treasure hunts. We were talking about this the other day, throughout the resort and finding different areas by following the app on their device.
Sure.
So that they are still feeling that they're using their technology, because sometimes they feel a little bit naked without clutching their phone. But they're using that to go and see real life experiences with real life other people, and therefore actually joining together and creating a real shared experience from that.
Fantastic. Philippe, what do you want people to walk away with when they're leaving the resort, both the children and the family unit as a whole? What kind of sense do you want them to have when they leave you?
That they're booking again.
Return reservation.
Which they do, and usually, most of the time with the group of friends that they have creating is they're giving you, let's meet next year or next month again, let's do the same, because everything that the resort team has been able to create is those experiences which create friendship and then coming back. What is amazing is that we see in some of our resorts is that those moments have been so strong that even when the children are growing, the parents with the group of friends that they have found and continue to come and continue of engaging the memories. I mean, this is really, what we are trying to making sure, and then gaining the feedback in order to continuously striving and learning from those experiences. We realize as well that the evolution of design and expectation for children, taking us to really take it to reshift the whole space of the kids club. We need to continuously making sure that we're not referring to one characters like in the past you were potentially referring to Disney or to any kind of those characters.
Sure.
That doesn't talk to a Chinese individuals or doesn't talk to a guest which is coming from another part of the world. So we're learning from those experiences in order to more work on those experiences rather than leaving the thematic of the kids club to a characters or putting a thematic where the children's not going to buy into it.
Sure. And Kate, you told me that you think you've done a good job when the children leave in tears. I think you better explain that.
We see success in many ways. Part of the success is when a child has had such a good time within the kids club that they actually cry when they have to go home because they are so much enjoying their time there. And the other joyous thing to see is when you're walking around at breakfast time, seeing children dragging their parents away from the breakfast table in order to be able to come and join in with the kids club activities. That's success for us, not just putting children into tears, really.
Fantastic. Now, this may be a bit of a controversial one, but maybe we'll be surprised. Simon, to what extent do you view junior visitors as potential customers, as adults, for Four Seasons?
You know, somewhat. I don't buy into this sort of logic that if you look after them when they're 4, they'll come and stay with you when they're 28. I mean, there's so much happens between everyone's life in between that period of time, but I think you can implant certain memories. You know, if I asked anyone in this room what was the happiest memory from your childhood, it's likely that there's going to be a holiday and a shared family moment somewhere that wasn't at home that comes up for all of us as this sort of, you know, light bulb moment, say, when we were there, or whatever it was. So I think if you can make sure that you capture some Four Seasons or some one and only, you know, memories in the children's psyche, they will associate that with a really happy time. And make sure that, you know, as the family stays with you through the years, that you continue to be relevant. You don't want to have a 16-year-old kid say, I don't want to stay because that hotel's boring. You have to be relevant. You know, what we see with millennials now, that their first experiences of our hotels are not by staying in the hotels. It's by visiting a bar or a restaurant or maybe a day spa guest. This is their first impression of being a Four Seasons consumer as an adult. So making the sort of experience relevant through it. But, you know, I'm not sure, I don't make that direct link that if you stay with us when you're, you know, 6 years old, you're going to buy with us at 26.
Philippe, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I agree. I mean, we're really entertaining the whole entire family in order for them to having a moment. And that's really the genuine approach from our team. And they don't have anything on the mind. I mean, again, our concept is blow away the customer, creating those memories. That's what all our team is focusing. And I think the rest, what you able, those moments, they're going to definitely come back and experiences. What we try to is that we try to leave a physical memories of the activity on the resort, you know, just planting a trees and putting your name on the trees with a family that you have sharing a good moment, give you an opportunity that you say, I might come back in 5 years' time and see how my trees has growing up. And those are those little time that we are giving, and the time is just like what you have done with us will grow over the time. And regardless of that you coming or not coming back, you have leave a piece of your family to our resort. We're more focusing on that, creating this story and making sure that the engineering and our staff is free, has no back-minded.
Sure. And I know that as a brand, one and only, you spend a lot of time talking to your guests, both the adults and to the kids as well. How do you kind of use that feedback to develop your programs?
I mean, today we're in a world of data and we're creating a lot of feedback and experiences. So first is to take the time to go very deep into those data and to understand who is our clientele and which area of the resort they have enjoyed, which is the activity which are relevant to them and which are the one which need to be putting on the site. At the end of the day, the activities might remain the same, but the children requested that they consistently created and changing year over the year. So we're taking those data and those intelligence in order for our general manager to do the right investment at the time. And most importantly is to give this information of those investments to the children right before they're coming to the resort and how it's going to reach them. So the importance of those experiences that we are creating, we're putting a lot of effort on communicating them ahead of time in order that the children and the family know what to expect on the resort.
Sure.
That's the very, very important times. And then afterwards, we're looking on Instagram posts, what was those moments which were family time and experiences on Facebook. We're making sure that what we have created has been captured. So that's why we're spending a lot of time with our marketing and digital team to making sure that what we do is right and can be shared amongst the guests and the person that they love.
Yeah. And Kate, how do you guys stay on top of what's in demand at the moment? What's on trend? What do kids want? How do you keep at the front of the game?
I think a lot of work is done through YouTube type scenarios. We are not in a position where we're able to show children, as you can imagine, because there's a safeguarding issue there. But we take an awful lot of our cues as to what we do by looking at what young people are portraying on video sites, because that's where kids get their information from now.
Sure.
They don't read it in the same way as we used to. They're not influenced by a lovely picture of a serene beach and a nice plate of food. They're interested in something fun and exciting that's happening. So we spend a lot of time looking at the whole video type society and the video social media to find out what it is that kids, particularly older kids, are looking to do, what's lighting their candle, and then we help develop programs for hotels that fit in with their own ethos as well, because it's not about what worldwide kids want to do, it's about what's going to work for that particular hotel. It has to be bespoke to that hotel. It's not a one-size-fits-all package. What's going to work in one Four Seasons hotel isn't going to work from what's in another Four Seasons hotel or a one and only property.
Sure.
So the way to keep up and find out what's going to happen is watch what the kids are creating themselves and then replicate the best of those ideas into the clubs.
Okay, lovely. Simon, just briefly, I'm going to ask all three of you to give us a few thoughts on what do we think this space is going to look like tomorrow in terms of children's travel, and then we'll just have time for a couple of questions from the audience. So, Simon, what do you think?
If I can just answer that last question
I'm sorry.
first, because I have a brief thought on it, and I agree with all the high-tech stuff, but I think also really listen to the guests, observe what they're doing, and then act on that feedback. I think that if you can do that, there's so much, experiences are happening in front of you, and people are always happy to tell you what they like and what they don't like, and then watch and observe, their family patterns, activities, what they're doing, what backpack the kid's wearing, if it's Peppa Pink socks or whatever the other, latest, cartoon character is. Be aware of that and then react to those sort of signals. I think it's important. What the future is? I don't know really. It's the future, right? If we all knew, we wouldn't be sitting here as hotels. We'd be creating it. I expect that it's going to involve those two extremes. I think that family values. Mm-hmm. I think that traditional activities and nature and the environment around you are all going to have a place. But I think it's going to be accompanied by an increasing, amount of technology, which means connectivity.
Fantastic. Kate?
I agree with you, particularly about the environmental side. Kids nowadays are so environmentally aware. I can see that becoming much stronger within their ethos and therefore what they want to do. But I also agree about the whole retro thing. We're going backwards in time in certain elements of what they want to do as far as games and toys, etc. are concerned. And I think we'll see more of that as well. But again, gosh, if I had a crystal ball, we'd do fantastic.
You see kids now buying record players again.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like two of my daughters have record players. I gave them Van Morrison, ELO, and one of the Beatles albums. Just to seed that good taste.
Excellent.
But you would have thought record players would never come back when you had the CD and then streaming. But there is something about vintage that's particularly desirable. Something that is of another era that has a tangible feel to it.
Like the Sony Walkman, that's going to make a comeback, I'm sure.
Probably. I wish I hadn't thrown them all away.
Be worth millions. Philippe, final thoughts?
No, I agree. I think sustainability is going to continue to pay more further interest, and we see how much that's a big thing. I do believe that we're going to have much more interest on well-being and having the children much more interested on anything related to spa, nutrition and everything, and that the parents are going to even pay a more further attention of that element. We see already that it's a bubbling area, and that we as hoteliers will need to adjust and to adapt, because our adult guests are already extremely intensive on that, and I don't see that far off that they will request exactly that what they have good for them will be for the children. But it will be going to a kind of a transition phase in terms of legislations and what we can do and not do. But I see that as a natural evolution of the market.
Thank you very much. Well, we've got 4 minutes left, so if anybody has any questions in the audience, please raise a hand. Don't all put them up at once. Oh, we have one in the front. Do we have a mic around?
Thank you. You spoke a lot about activities, which is fabulous, but when you go back to basics, I think for me as a parent, that is the absolute most important thing, things being right when you turn up. You haven't talked much about room configuration and the actual accommodation for the family. Still, I find most resorts are not made family-sized, or you still need interconnecting rooms. What are your future plans in terms of how your actual estate looks?
Maybe, we looked at it when we just opened a private island in Desroches in the Seychelles. And so commercially you're always caught between the value of buildable space and the cost of buildable space, and then how you can best, configure that. What we did in Desroches and what we've done in other resorts is made sure we have much more connectable inventory, and connectable of different sizes. You might want a configuration, but if you have very young children, they're not far away, but there's maybe a little side area that the crib can be in, whereas teenage children might like the living room in between you and them. So we far more look at inventory that can support families, and what we're also finding that grandparents often hold a great degree of affluence, and they will invite their children and grandchildren on holiday, so making sure you have inventory that can accommodate extended families as well.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you for the question.
Okay, well, all that remains is to say thank you very much to our panel, and thank you guys for coming, and we look forward to seeing what's next in the world of luxury children's travel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jed.
Thanks very much.